Hello, I am Professor Parthapratim Chakraborty from Department of Geology, University of Delhi. I welcome you to an episode that deals with statistical appraisal of grain size analysis data and its use in interpretation of source rock, grain transportation history and depositional environment. Besides, we will also discuss about shapes, packing and orientation of grains in sedimentary rocks. I expect that after studying this module, you shall be able to know how grain size analysis data are processed statistically and the parameters derived from such statistical analysis. You will be able to learn about use of statistical data for interpretation of sediment provenance, their transportation history and environment of deposition. It is expected that you will be able to understand about grain shape and fabric, meaning of grain imbrication. So, let us start with the introduction of it. All methods that is devised for statistical treatment of grain size data of sedimentary rocks use grain size in the abscissa, that is the horizontal scale, and some measure of percentage frequency as the ordinate, that is the vertical scale. Now, grain size analysis may either be plotted directly in millimeter scale or using a logarithmic base paper you can use it in the plotted in the phi scale or phi unit, in which case arithmetic base paper is used. The latter is much more convenient and accurate to read. Now, come to the different methods of statistical analysis which we practice on grain size data. First one is the most simplest one, that is the histogram. A histogram is essentially a bar graph in which the percentages for each size grade are plotted as a column. It is very easy to prepare and one can easily interpret general features of the sediments. It is a pictorial method. Now, you can see in the figure 1 that sediments of different size grades, they are plotted as columns in a histogram. However, this method cannot be used for determination of any statistical parameters such as median, sorting, etc. Its shape is greatly affected by the sieve interval chosen. The same sample may look entirely different if it is analyzed on a different set of screens. Nevertheless, it proves of value plotting distribution of sediments on a map or stratigraphic section, as the height of the column may be more easily compared even by an untrained eye. Now, the second procedure what we follow is the cumulative curve. Now, there are two methods, one is the arithmetic ordinate method. This is the most commonly used method, and used method in the abscissa one may either use the millimeter, in which case he or she may use semi-log paper, or when the phi unit, that is ordinary squared arithmetic paper is used at that time. In the ordinate, the arithmetic scale runs from 0 to 100%. Grain size is plotted on the abscissa with coarser grains to the left. This is customary in all size analysis plot that is followed universally and globally. Cumulative percentage of the sediments are plotted on this graph. For example, if 30% of the material is coarser than 2 phi, that is caught on a 2 phi screen, then 30 is plotted as the ordinate against 2 as the abscissa. A curve is then drawn through all the resulting points, as you can see in figure 2. A cumulative frequency curve is plotted with arithmetic ordinate. One must be very careful that the curve must pass through all plotted points, and one should not use a French curve in any case. The sample analysis normally forms an S-shaped curve. The advantage of this curve is that all statistical parameters one can identify and read from it exactly. Thus, one can compare samples quantitatively as to median, skewness, etc. The shape of the curve is independent of sieves used. The sieve numbers are kept following US standard sieves that correspond to various millimeters and phi sizes, whereas sieve mesh 10, that is 2 millimeter opening and below correspond to gravel size grain in US standard, we use sieve mesh between 10, 2 mm and 230, that is 0.0625 mm opening for sand grains between granule and fine sand sites. For coarse silt size grains, sieve mesh higher than 230 may be used. Its only disadvantage is that it is difficult for the untrained eye to look at the curve and interpret it at a glance. Also, if the sieve interval is wide, sketching the curve between data points is subject to considerable error. Now, coming on to the cumulative curve with probability ordinate. Most sediments tend to approach the normal probability curve in their size frequency distribution. In other words, most of the particles are clustered about a given size with less and less material on either side of this size. If the cumulative curve of sediment following the normal symmetrical probability distribution that is plotted on a probability paper, the result is that you will get a perfectly straight line whose position depends on the average particle size and whose slope depends on the sorting. This happens because the probability scale is very condensed in the middle of the scale, that is between 30 to 70%, and very much expanded at the ends, that is under 10 or above 90, and thereby what we do, that we straighten out the S-shaped curve which was plotted on the arithmetic paper, which will be straightened and become a straight line, which will be finally give you the valuable information about studying the departure of sediments from the normal probability law. However, moreover, since the tails are straightened out and the samples tends to plot as a straight line, it is possible to read the statistical parameters with much greater accuracy because of the ease of interpolation and extrapolation. Hence, this is the curve that must be used for all determination of parameters. The only disadvantage with this curve is that it is even less pictorial and than the arithmetic cumulative curve. Now, you can see in figure 3 the cumulative curve that plotted on a probability ordinate. Note that the S-shaped curve which was plotted earlier in the arithmetic ordinate has transformed into a straight line curve in the present probability ordinate. Now, coming on to the fourth procedure of the representation, that is the frequency curve. So, what is a frequency curve? A frequency curve represents in essence a smoothened histogram in which a continuous bell shaped curve takes the place of the discontinuous bar graph. Although strictly pictorial, it gives a much better picture than this histogram because it is independent of the sieve interval used and is the best method to use in dissecting mixed populations into their separate normal distributions. Mathematically, if we say, it is the first derivative of the cumulative curve and is thus obtained by measuring the slope of the tangents to the cumulative curve, as you can see in figure 4. Now, to construct it, one plots a cumulative curve with arithmetic, mind it is not probability ordinate, it is arithmetic ordinate. Now, one measures the slopes of the tangents to this curve at various grain size values. For example, if one wants to find the frequency at a diameter of 2.55, lay a straight edge tangent to the curve at the point where the 2.55 line intersects it. Measure the slope of this tangent by noting how much the tangent raises over a horizontal distance of half pi unit. This value then is plotted at 2.5 on the frequency curve. This is how the frequency curve is made, but you must be very much sure that all points of inflection, that is the steeper places on the cumulative curve, and the sag, that is the flatter places on the cumulative curve, are covered in the process. For very accurate work, a cumulative probability curve should be plotted first, then from this probability curve data points may be taken to construct a much more accurate cumulative curve on the arithmetic graph paper. Now, figure 4 that illustrates the frequency curve, how it is constructed by measurement of slopes on cumulative percent curve. Now, after this we will discuss the statistical parameters that we identify and measure and which talks about the average size of the sediment. It is desirable to have a measure which will say that yes, sample A is so much coarser than sample B. This is not as easy as it looks and sounds, though, because there are many different measures of average size. Using one measure, sample A may be look coarser, using another measure, sample B may be looking coarser. The parameters which help us in making this decision are: number 1 is mode, that is the most frequently occurring particle diameter. It is the diameter corresponding to the steepest point, that is the point of inflection on the cumulative curve, only if the curve has an arithmetic frequency scale. It corresponds to the highest point on the frequency curve. Now, coming on to the another parameter, that is median. Half of the particles by weight are coarser than the median and half are finer. It is the diameter corresponding to the 50% mark on the cumulative curve and may be expressed either in phi or millimeter. Now, the third parameter which we identify is the graphic mean. The best graphic measure, we can say it is the mean for determining the overall size, given by the formula, that is the phi 16 plus phi 50 plus phi 84 divided by 3. Once we do away with all these procedures, then the thing comes that how is the sorting of the grains, and that is why the inclusive graphic standard deviation that we measure. The graphic standard deviation is defined as a measure of sorting and is computed as phi 84 minus phi 16 divided by 2. However, this takes only the central 2/3 of the curve, and a better measure is the inclusive graphic standard deviation or psi I, given by the formula, that is phi 84 minus phi 16 by 4 plus phi 95 minus phi 5 by 6.6. Now, measurement of sorting values for a large number of sediments has made us to suggest the following verbal classification scale for sorting, that is, if the skewness value less than 0.35 psi, we call it a very well sorted. If it is 0.35 to 0.5 psi, it is well sorted. 0.5 to 0.71 psi, it is moderately well sorted. 0.71 to 1 psi, that is the moderately sorted. 1 to 2 psi is the poorly sorted, and 2 to 4 psi very poorly sorted. Over 4 psi, that is the extremely poorly sorted. After this, that we have to judge how the distribution curve is skewed, or what is called the asymmetry of any distribution curve. The curves may be similar in the average size and in the sorting values, but one may be symmetrical and the other may be asymmetrical. Now, skewness measures the degree of asymmetry as well as the sign, that is, whether it is negatively skewed or the positively skewed, whether a curve has an asymmetrical tail on the left or the right. Now, you see figure 5 that shows that the measure of asymmetry of a curve, that how we measure the asymmetry of a curve. In the figure, if you look at the value, if we take the x, the midpoint of phi 16 and phi 84 values, and which can be found by the phi 16 plus phi 84 by 2. In this case, it is 1 plus 3 divided by 2 or 2 phi. Then the distance a is the displacement of the median, that is phi 50 from the midpoint, that is x. The skewness measure is then a by sigma, where the a is phi 16 plus phi 84 by 2 minus phi 50, and sigma is phi 84 minus phi 16 divided by 2. So, skewness, what we also known as SKG, is phi 16 plus phi 84 minus 2 phi 50 divided by phi 84 minus phi 16. In this case, 1 plus 3 minus 2, that is divided by 3 minus 1, that is 0.50 is the skewness value, that is the asymmetry of the curve. Note that the median is displaced by 0.50 of the way from the x. This defines the asymmetry of the curve, and then we call it the inclusive graphic skewness. The skewness measure discussed in the above discussion, that is basically covers only 68% of the curve, as we have only taken into consideration between phi 16 and phi 84, but most of the skewness occurs in the tails of the curve. This is not a sensitive enough measure. That is why to cover more part of the curve, a much better statistics, one can include 90% of the curve in the inclusive graphic skewness. This formula simply averages the skewness obtained using the phi 16 and phi 84 points with the skewness obtained by using the phi 5 and phi 95 points, and then average it out, both determined by exactly the same principle as we discussed in the figure. So, phi 16 plus phi 84 minus 2 phi 50 divided by 2 into phi 84 minus phi 16 plus phi 5 plus phi 95 minus 2 phi 50 divided by 2 into phi 95 minus phi 5. Now, this figure illustrates the normal positively skewed and negatively skewed distribution pattern as we say. Now, next parameter what we talk about is the measures of kurtosis or pickedness of any distribution. In the normal probability curve as we defined by the Gaussian formula, the phi diameter interval between phi 5 and phi 95 points should be exactly 2.44 times the phi diameter interval between the phi 25 and phi 75 points. The kurtosis measure used here is the graphic kurtosis that is used by Fock, given by the formula, that is the phi 95 minus phi 5 divided by 2.44 into phi 75 minus phi 25. Now, figure 7 is illustrates you that what is called the pickedness in the distribution pattern, and then you can see sometimes the central portion of is highly picked or sometimes the sidewise portion is highly picked. Now, what is the grain size distribution after measuring all these statistical parameters? What is the use of these parameters in terms of the interpretation, that will be discussed now. We interpret this all our statistical parameters by means of the availability of grain sizes in the provenance, sediment transport mechanism, that is bed load, saltation or suspension, and depositional environment and processes operative therein. Hence, a careful analysis of grain size distribution curve may offer understanding about each of these factors. So, first start with the control of provenance. Depending on lithology, erosion and weathering history, specific size of grains are supplied from any source area. Sediments generated out of chemical weathering of acid igneous rocks such as granites are characteristically quartz grains corresponding to the size of quartz crystals in granite, and clay minerals, that is kaolinite, smectite, illite, principally developed through decomposition of feldspars in weathering profile. In contrast, when a basic rock such as a gabbro, a dolerite, a basalt, they on weathering give rise to clay minerals and lithic fragments where erosion is high, but practically no sand grains, because it does not have that much of sand grain size crystal in it. Now, how we describe the transportation history? A grain size distribution curve may consist of several populations of grain sizes, each of which may have log normal distribution and assume straight line when plotted on probability paper. Each segment of the curve is interpreted to represent different subpopulations of grains that were transported simultaneously, but by different transport process. Visscher in 1969 was the first to suggest the distinction between sediments of different environments based on general shape of the curve and the slopes of the curve segments and positions of the truncation points, that is the break in slope, that is between the straight line segments. Now, you can see figure 8 where there are several segments in this figure, which indicates that the different populations of grains they are transported when in the different mechanism, that is the bed load, the saltation and the suspension. However, a particular grain size distribution does not point unambiguously to a particular environment because of variability in the depositional conditions within major environmental settings, as well as due to operation of similar hydrodynamic conditions in different environments. Now, how we describe or interpret the depositional environment from the grain size analysis data? Fluvial sediments normally show poor sorting and positive skewness, that is the widespread towards the finer grain size, that is higher phi values, and a sharp delimitation at large grain size end. For any river system, there will be a reasonably definite upper limit of grain size that it can transport as bed load, which we are defined as a competency, whereas there will be no sorting of finer size fractions that it can carry in suspension. In fact, there is no process in rivers which preferentially remove finer grain sizes. Major variations in river flow velocity may occur during floods and cause poor sorting in the river sediments. What about the aeolian or the wind sediment? They also have positive skewness, because there is a upper limit of core size that wind can transport. However, there may be a tail of finer grain size in an aeolian dune sediment, as fine grain sediments can be protected from erosion and transport under the armor of relatively larger sand size grains. However, unlike fluvial sediments, aeolian sediments are well to very well sorted. Now, figure 9, in this we are showing the granulometric characters of sediments belonging to different environments. Now, what about the beach sediments? They are negatively skewed, unlike the fluvial or aeolian sediments, which are positively skewed. This means that the distribution curve shows a definite lower limit of grain size, whereas there is often a tail of larger grain size, that is granules and pebbles. In beach, repeated breaking of waves take sediments in suspension, and finer sediments, fine sand, silt, clay are swept away. Coarser grains, particularly medium to coarse sand, rapidly settle down from suspension and get deposited on the beach again. Besides, beach sediments are well sorted also. Now, sediments deposited from suspension, they are mainly poorly sorted and positively skewed. One example is the turbidity current and the sediments formed out of that, in which sediments remain in suspension because of fluid turbulence, and that allows suspension sediment settlement, and hence characterized by poor sorting and positive skewness. Although this character is nearly similar with characters of fluvial sediments, but distinction between the two can be made, as the two products can totally different in their average grain size. Average grain size of the fluvial sediments much coarser than compared to the turbiditic sediments. Now, in glacial transportation do not allow separation of the different size ranges, and hence the glacial tilts, which are the classical deposit of the glacial system, they show a extremely poor sorting. Now, we discuss something about the particle shape. Two parameters, that is roundness and sphericity, these are used to describe shape of any clastic grain. What is roundness of a grain? It is a property of surface shape, that is whether a grain is smooth or angular. Roundness is defined as the sum of all radii of circles which can be inscribed by a section through the grain and divided by the radius of the maximum size inscribed circle. So, roundness, it is the summation of small r, which are the all small inscribed circles divided by capital R. As it is difficult to measure in practice, so Petersen proposed a visual scale for degree of roundness of sedimentary grains, as shown in the figure below. Now, we come to the sphericity. This is a expression for expressing degree of deviation of a shape of a grain from an ideal spherical form. The parameter is defined as the ratio between the diameter of a circumscribed circle around the grain and the diameter of a sphere which has same volume with that of the grain, that is nominal diameter. For an ellipsoidal grain with 3 axes of diameters, that is the large, intermediate and the short axis, the sphericity is defined at the cube root of the small and the intermediate, product of small and intermediate, divided by the larger diameter square. For grains of any other shape, sphericity is defined as the ratio between the surface area of any sphere having same volume with that of a grain and the actual surface area of the grain. Considering the difficulty in measuring surface area, the ratio is replaced by the ratio that is the diameter of the grain and the diameter of the same sphere which has the same volume as that of the grain. As the diameter of the circumscribing sphere, that is the longest diameter of the grain. So, simply the process, to simplify this process, the Jing classified 4 shapes of grain based shape analysis, that is on the basis of B by A and C by B ratios, where A, B and C represents length, breadth and thickness of a grain. 4 classes defined thereby are oblate, prolate, triaxial and equiaxial. As described in the following diagram, you can see that all the 4 shapes that is described in the shape. Now, coming on to the grain fabric or the packing and the orientation of the grain. What is grain fabric? The grain fabric refers to the way the constituent particles of a sediment body are mutually arranged. There are 2 elements which guide the fabric of a sedimentary rock. 1, that grain packing, and 2, the grain orientation. Now, what is grain packing? Then when spheres of uniform size is packed, that is 6 different packing motifs can be generated, and that can vary from cubic, where we can get the most loosely packed with a theoretical porosity of 48% to rhombohedral, the most closely packed with theoretical porosity of 26%. A more realistic packing value can be obtained taking prolate spheroids into consideration. Now, and that also the rhombohedral and cubic packing. The packing index is defined as the product of number of grain contacts observed in a thin section traverse and the average grain diameter divided by the length of the traverse. However, post depositional compaction changes the grain shape and arrangement so much that depositional packing leave very little effect on porosity of lithified sediment. Now, coming on to the last topic, that is grain orientation. Now, what is how we define the orientation of a grain? The orientation of a grain is commonly referred with respect to the direction of flow in which it got deposited and the horizontal plane. Sand grain orientation is difficult to document because of difficulty in measurement. However, for pebble gravel size class, a very common orientation pattern is referred to as imbrication, which often is used as a good paleocurrent indicator. 2 different imbrication patterns are commonly noted, that is, one is AT, A transverse B imbricated, and another is A parallel and A imbricated, where A refers to the longest axis of the pebble and B refers to the intermediate axis. The A transverse B imbricated imbrication, that is long axis transverse with the flow direction and intermediate axis dipping up current, is noted in class transported as bed load, whereas class present within matrix supported conglomerates which are product of debris flows, they can show presence of A parallel A imbricated, that kind of a imbrication, that is long axis parallel with flow direction and also dipping up current. This is all we have for you today. We hope you enjoyed this session. See you again. Till then, thank you. Namaskar.